Shot is presented by Botano. The game starts now. Here are your hosts, Brent Wallace, Jason York, and Bobby Ryan.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Coming In Hot. Brent Wallace alongside Bobby Ryan. As Jason York, we like to say, Bobby, on assignment.
Well, is he teeing off today?
I think so. Yeah.
Probably golfing.
Somewhere. Yeah. Although he's probably maybe picking out carpet samples for his new office.
Let's hope so. And maybe he can fix the back of his, I can't look at his hockey skates anymore. So we got to work on that.
Yes. We have, by the way, we do have Andy Sutton waiting. We're going to bring him in just a sec. I'm excited to have a chat with him because there's been lots of stuff I've always wanted to talk about. And the big one is the expert conversation, because I'll tell you what happened to me, which was one of the worst moments in my career at that time. So we'll get into that in a sec.
We're going to hear this.
Training camp is underway. And quickly, I just want to ask you, Josh Norris is in a yellow non-contact jersey. But they said it's no big deal. Yeah. Is it a big deal for you for the first day of camp? They're saying, hey, he could play if he had to, but we're going to maybe not let him get hit.
Yeah, not a big deal for me one bit. I think when you have a guy that missed an entire year, that what was the word? Was it tweak that they said?
Yeah. Minor.
So yeah. So he probably bumped a guy in a weird way, and I don't read into it one bit. I think that you have to play that extra cautious. You have to.
He had 8 months.
I know. I get it.
But you know what it seems like to the fan? To the fan, it's like, oh my God, because you always take injuries with a grain of salt by saying, if he's really being held out, then it's more of a bigger deal than we think it is.
I don't think so. And I have no inside knowledge. I should probably text him and get some for the show. But no, I was
hoping, but I wasn't going to ask you. Yeah, okay.
No, I would never do that to the player. You know that. But I don't read anything into it. I think he's going to be just fine opening night.
All right, perfect. That's all we need. We just need him in the lineup opening night. Now, into our lineup, we'd like to bring in the expert, as we like to call, although I'm sure he's tired of this by ad nauseum. It's been like 13 years. But Andy Sutton, former Ottawa Senator, welcome to the show.
Hey, boys, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great, man. Just chilling on the farm today. It's a beautiful day in Tennessee, as Bobby will tell you. We're in a pretty good cycle right now.
It is gorgeous. You know what? Yeah. Did you get enough olive oil in this morning?
But it's all about moisture, buddy. Moisture. Get a little bit of sun on the chest.
Yeah,
it ups the testosterone, Bobby. 300%. You get 20 minutes of sunshine on the chest.
I saw. I ran into Andy yesterday, actually, or was that 2 days ago? I ran into you. Yeah. I drove by and my girlfriend was like, "I think that's your friend Andy." So we see him over there, and the hair is done up. He's on a little lunch break with his wife at the same place I was headed. So I texted him. I was like, "The hair looks good. You were dialed in."
Buddy, like the hair seems to precede me everywhere I go, but I don't do anything with my hair. I wake up like this. It's like I just roll. I roll with the mess.
You wake up with that coif?
Buddy, I wake up like this. It just stands up. That's all it wants to do.
I love it.
Okay, would you ever go back to the frosted tips that you rocked in Atlanta?
I see some of that sometimes, and it's a good thing I was tough. That's all I can say. It was like I would have probably kicked my own ass if I had the chance.
Fair enough. By the way, those who may not be familiar with Andy Sutton's game, here's a little bit of video to let you know how Andy Sutton would play the game, which is a different time back in the day.
He has been known to throw some ferocious hits this year, and he has done them legally as well. That's been one of the great things as well.
I don't know how many penalties this is, but they're all clean.
0. Oh, that one's dicey. Oh, God.
That's Nick Foligno, who I'm going to ask you about in a sec.
He got Foligno. Anyway. He got Foligno. Full on Foligno.
Listen, you had a hell of a career, but you didn't think you were going to the NHL, if I'm not mistaken, because 6 weeks before you were working on your engineering degree.
Yeah, to be honest with you guys, I've told this story a million times. It didn't really happen easily for me. You know, I got I knew I wanted to get a scholarship. I knew I wanted to focus on education and hope to have a Division I hockey experience at the same time. I didn't have a lot of offers, but I took a partial scholarship to Michigan Tech, which was a Division I program, and I chose to study engineering while I was there, and was right near the end of my time there, really, when things sort of all hit. Through the first 3 seasons, not much was happening for me. I got a scholarship as a forward. They converted me to defense my sophomore season, and that obviously took a while to figure out, especially playing on Olympic ice. Junior year was nothing to write home about, and I'd had a shoulder surgery the year before. And then, in retrospect, I remember thinking before my final year at school, like, this could be it for me. This is the last kick at the can. And Bobby, I'm sure you can attest to this too. There's that, when you're playing really well, there's that sweet spot between, like, I care a lot and I don't give a shit. And there's a threshold there where if you can rely on your instincts and you have a significant enough skill set, then that's where the magic happens. And not overthinking things. And that's really what happened that year. Everything I touched worked. I won Defensive Player of the Year for the league and had 14 NHL teams offer me the maximum to sign. And think about that at the time, guys. In the late 90s, I was a 6'6" defenseman at 245 pounds, and I never got drafted. So, I mean, it's like, it's crazy to think about now. Like, I don't know that nowadays I'd have slipped through the cracks, but back then, it could happen. You could go up into northern Michigan and disappear for 4 years, and maybe people saw me the first couple of 3 years and were like, yeah, this guy's, he doesn't have it, And then really the career was very much the same thing. I feel like, I started out in San Jose with a team full of veterans back when veterans ruled the roost, and Daryl Sutter as a coach, and that was a interesting experience. I got in some trouble there, as some young players do. I actually called Dean Lombardi a chicken shit, which was probably not the right thing to do while I was there. And they thankfully they exposed me in the waiver draft, and I went to Minnesota. Well, then Jacques Lemaire and company tries to turn me back into a forward, and I realized that that's not going to be the key for longevity for me. So at 24 years old, I go to Jacques Lemaire and tell him that I think I'm meant to be a defenseman in the NHL, and they tell me there's no chance I'm going to play defense in the NHL. Well, that was all the fuel I needed. So I went in to Doug Risebrough, and I can't even believe I did this on my own without my agent in retrospect, but I went in and asked for a trade very respectfully. I said, hey, I think I'm meant to be a defenseman in this league. I think it's a key for me to have longevity. If there's anybody that would want me as a defenseman, if you'd be so kind as to trade me. And he traded me to Atlanta within a week. I landed in LA. My agent was there, and he's like, "You've been traded," and got on a bird. And I was in North Georgia practicing the next day with the Thrashers and as a defenseman. And that was kind of where it all took off for me. Not initially, when I first got there, we were the worst team in the league. We couldn't get out of our own end. That wasn't a great, way to start as a defenseman. I think at that time, I still thought I needed to fight a lot, because I got a little bit typecast, I think, early in my career because I was fighting. But I was a college guy. I wasn't really meant to do that. So part of it, and I think any player has to figure out their identity, and then the players that are most successful are the ones that do that well enough where the coaches can rely on you. And I think that's sort of what started to develop for me in Atlanta under Bob Hartley.
Interesting. So Jacques Lemaire wanted to make you a forward. Now, Jacques Lemaire, known as one of the best defensive coaches in the game, right? And so that's an interesting dynamic for me. Were you a little insulted?
Wait, before you answer that. We played together, and in what world were you a forward?
You've seen my mitts, big boy. They're not bad.
I can't wait till next Wednesday.
Me too. I can't wait.
We have a good and Suts kind of runs the pro skate here, or what do you want to call it? The old man pro skate, or
it's pretty old man. Smitty and I were tooling around yesterday, and we've got I think when I played, I had maybe 2.5 speeds. I'm down to 1.25 now, if that. I've got one spin up the ice, and I'm dead. Same thing for Smitty, but it's fun. Bobby, it's just it's about staying connected and getting out there. I say that to people all the time, hockey, especially now when you're not doing it for a living, is the only time that I'm doing a million things at once without thinking about anything. And you're free. You're like a kid. And that's the piece too. Like whenever I had success as a player, it was the same thing. Like I was kind of living in that space, just being more, instinctual and just trusting myself and just kind of free flowing with the game. But I don't disagree with you, Bobby. I was always meant to block shots and hit people and get in the way, I think.
Well, I'm pumped. I'll be out next Wednesday. I'm 100% guaranteed. I got the right away. I'm in. So
right
if I don't know about you, but I have a tough time fitting into the gear. So I'm on a cut program until I get there Wednesday.
Don't worry, buddy. We can get you some gear if you need some. You need some double X pants or something like that. We can hook you up.
I'm gonna be doing exactly what Randy Carlisle did in his last few years and wear the girdle without the shell without the girdle.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Don't mention that name, Jeepers Creepers.
I was gonna get to that at some point, but maybe we'll just skip it. By the way, do you still own alpacas?
You know what? We had to rehome the alpacas. I did a little stint out in South Carolina for a while, so we rehomed the alpacas, and now we're back. And I'm actually in mid-construction on this house, and we put the farm back together. I'd walk you guys over to the chicken coop. The chickens are here. We run a little egg business for my son, and we've got 5 acres here in Franklin. So we're debating what animals we bring back. It got to the point where the farm started to become quite an encumbrance. I couldn't leave home. It's like I needed a farm hand. I was like, what is going on here? This is not how I want to spend my days. Being quarantined with alpacas. But they're pretty incredible animals for sure.
I just love all the stuff that you find yourself into. By the way, those who don't know, CEO of Viburo Hockey, which we'll get to later, makes all kinds of custom equipment. You can check them out online. But I'll get back to that in a sec. Okay, so you get traded from Long Island to Ottawa. What are your thoughts?
Honestly, at the time, I was so happy. I had a great season in Long Island, but we weren't making the playoffs. I was feeling great. I was playing well, and then to get to go in on a team that had the firepower that team had at the time, and to get to play with players like that, and to be partnered with Erik Karlsson, and spending time with Bobby and and Fish and Spezza and Alfredsson. I mean, the team was just so dynamic and had so many weapons, and just. Unfortunately, I guess we ran into the Pittsburgh Penguins in their prime. I mean, Bobby, you remember that series? I mean, I just remember that every single time I touched the puck, I got hammered, and they were like that. What's that?
We played together in Anaheim, buddy.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you weren't on that team. What am I talking about? Anyways, regardless, so many stars. I forget them all, obviously, but it was that team was such a that's so much firepower, and I think if we'd made it through that, we would have had a hell of a chance to go all the way. But I think they were deeper than we were. I think their third and fourth line. When you've got Chris Kunitz playing on your third and fourth line, I mean, it's tough to beat that team.
Yeah. It entertains me though the fact that you had. You, Matt Karkner, Anton Volchenkov, Chris Phillips, and someone else on the blue line. Like you were I had to have been the meanest blue line in the NHL.
Oh, beefy. Yeah, it was a beefy bunch, but I think with the way the game was going too, and you think about like this sort of more modern puck moving defenseman, I think a lot of us were very similar players, and that might have been problematic. Like you really, if I'm putting a team together, you certainly you want guys that are hard to play against, but you need guys that can lug the puck out of the zone a bit too, and make some evasive moves to make a good outlet pass and stuff like that. I mean, we might have lacked that a little bit. Obviously, Erik made up for a lot of people's inadequacies, but at the same point in time, like trying to read off of what he was going to do was no small task, and then thankfully it was mine. But it was obviously an honor, and to see the player that he's turned into is just it's really no surprise after having spent the time there playing with him.
Did you think he was going to win 3 Norris trophies?
Well, that's crazy for starters. That's crazy even just to say that. But there was such a. When you just knew there was magic there. Like it was just magic. Anytime he got the puck, like everyone in the stands, everyone on the bench, just on the tip, on the edge of their seats, because he can just make it happen, and he's fearless now. He was fearless back then, rocking an upper decker and like just toe dragging guys at the blue line as the last man. Like, he doesn't care, and he's got the skills to pay the bills. And if he gets roasted, guess what he's going to do the next shift? He's going to do the same damn thing, but he's probably going to figure out a way to get the puck past the guy. He's got a very good self-confidence and knew even as a young player. I remember at that time that year, I played at 265 pounds that year, and Eric was 165 pounds at the time. So he called me the old man, and I think I was 35 at the time, which is crazy, like that you're an old man at 35. But I had him by 100 pounds, and we couldn't be more different styles of defense. But I think we made a nice partnership when we were together.
Mark Mathot would always say that Carl would get mad at him because he would expect him to understand the game at his level. Did he ever snap at you because you didn't project what he was going to do?
No, I didn't. I saw it as my responsibility to insulate him in every way, right? So like, make sure if anybody messed with him, I was in there. Make sure that if he was trying something, that I was always kind of backing him up. I was very rarely trying to bust to get open and putting us in a sort of a double negative offensive position, like, because you just never knew what was going to happen with him. So I was always kind of there, just making sure I supported him, and I recognized very early what my role was. I think maybe Mark had some agendas of his own, but mine, my agenda was just really to insulate Eric.
The triple over. I'm going to get to the expert thing in a sec. I know you're tired of probably talking about it, but I was in that scrum, so I feel like we can chat about this a little more. Yeah. The triple overtime game with Matt Karkner scoring. I think you played 32 minutes that game, 32 or 36. Can you take us through that game and what I guess guys are feeling? I think it's the longest game I've ever covered.
Well, I think I actually played close to 50 minutes, because I think the only player that played more than me was Eric. I think Eric was at it was some crazy number. But I can remember at the end of that game, and thank Jesus we won. But like, I can remember I got pounded in the thighs by Chris Kunitz 25 times, and every guy that on their team, the Penguins were they rolled in waves, and they just played the same, and even their skilled players banged you. And it was very clear to me that, if I'm honest, in retrospect, we were not going to make it through that series. Like, you could just tell. Yeah. They had command and control. They knew exactly what to do. They were perfectly coached. Everybody had bought into a style of play. And then they've got, just absolute studs that can burn you if you get exposed. And, when you have Sidney Crosby on this, I remember in the playoffs, this was in Ottawa, and the puck rimmed around from coming in on their left side around to our right side, and I went back and pivoted. It was coming into my corner, and I took an angle to come and meet Sid in receiving the puck along the boards, and I thought I was going to smash him. And he picked it up on his backhand, and he spun away from me in one move. And before I could turn around, he was 4 feet from the net. They didn't score, but I'll never forget just playing against him or other guys that I was fortunate enough to play against. Bobby, you were the same way. Could just make something out of nothing, and just totally expose you if you had just a little bit of the wrong angle or too much speed going in the wrong direction, and just make you look like you're just from some kind of bush league or something like that, playing against the guys. So I mean, those guys were just always waiting, and if there was the smallest mistake, the puck was in the net. And you guys know that's all it takes at that level. And as you get further and further into the playoffs, I mean, these 2-1 games, or you look at the way the LA Kings won Stanley Cups, I mean, you're talking about margins for error that are just so small. So it's no surprise that those guys were perennial favorites for the Stanley Cup for probably a decade, right?
Yeah.
I would say that. And you talk about all the things that guys like Sidney Crosby do. He puts up 100 lines. He does this. He sees things other players don't see. What never really when it gets talked about is when they show that clip against Jason Spezza where he goes back and forth 3 or 4 times before they score that weird goal. And that goal wasn't a great goal. He just he owned the puck. What he doesn't get a ton of credit for is that I don't know if I've played against a better player in my career than him from below the top of the circle in. He is not only crafty, he is the best puck protector I've ever seen.
It's unbelievable.
He puts the puck to the next place before you're there, and then he drops down and spreads his thighs apart, and then gets his shoulder underneath of you, and he's gone. And he does it so fast and so well. So I mean, like when you pick apart Sidney Crosby's game, you can't pick apart much, but nobody ever really talks about the fact that he is better than that than everybody else too.
Bobby, it's so true, you know, and he did such a good job of like using, like I would always try to apply force to like dictate the direction where he would go. Well, all he would do, like in sort of like the principles of judo, like he'd use your force against you. You'd almost push him away from you, you know, and he's so low and so strong in his base. You really couldn't have much of an effect on what he was trying to do. So it's more about containment and just trying to get your stick in the way of the puck so he can't make a filthy backdoor pass or something like that. Because the other part of it is like he sees everybody. I mean, when he's doing that, he knows where it's not like his head's down like when I'm doing that in the corner trying to get away from him. Like he sees everybody on the ice. So I mean, you just got to be so careful. And really, like the only way to beat a player like that, and especially when there's several of them on the ice, you just got to beat them by committee. The whole group has to swarm and just make sure that you're tight defensively. All five guys have to be sort of like inside the face-off dot to make sure
you got to have a blanket, right?
Yeah, you got to blanket them. It's the only way.
Yeah.
All right. So, biggest hit of your career, is it Jordan Leopold's or is there a different one?
No, there's a different one. I hit Chris Stewart in Colorado, and I heard Stewie after then. He was like 240 pounds, and I think he said it was the hardest he's ever been hit in his whole career. But that hit in particular, he came up and I got him in the same spot I always get everybody. He had his head down, and I caught him like more with my side. I equate that hit to like if you took 2 bags of 250-pound bags of cement and swung them down from the rafters and they met at the blue line. That's what it was like. He went off the ice. He couldn't breathe. I felt like I was going to die. But the hit on Leopold was probably the most violent hit that I had. I think that year that I came to Ottawa, I think I knocked like 10 people out cold and with open ice hits. I mean, it was a pretty nasty year. I had a lot of great hits that year, and that one, like looking at it now, was so dirty. I mean, the head being the principal point of contact. I mean, at the same point in time, if you watch that hit at full speed, I mean, just how quickly that happens, you know, and what people don't understand is like how fractional that is, like to catch that player, even be able to make that play. You know, I had a good knack of being able to pivot from backwards to forwards and move to close that gap very quickly. And when I had the confidence to do so and step up, you know, if there was good back pressure and stuff like that, I would just go for it. And you know, it was also the energy of that time in the playoffs and trying to make something happen to sort of spawn something on for the team. And you know, I think the commentator had said maybe 5 minutes before, like, oh, Sutton's been very quiet this series, you know, and then all of a sudden it was just like, you know, it was on. And I went in the bench, and in hindsight, I kind of wish I'd dummied Crosby when he came up to greet me. You know, that would have been like the cherry on top, you know, 'cause he was the first one in there, but I was still kind of, you know, settling myself, getting out of the penalty box, and you know, making sure my knee wasn't wrenched when I fell in there. But it was definitely a moment in this series. And I say this often too now, like looking back at it, and that was part of the game. They paid me to do that. It's partially why I was paid. I think about Jordan now more than anything, and he's got a family and hopefully a long life ahead of him. And I just, you know, we all know guys that have struggled with stuff relative to concussions. We probably all have, and it's pretty scary stuff. And I think the game's in a better place now that there isn't so much of that type of stuff going on. But I mean, I came up in the 90s. I mean, so I grew up and when I went to San Jose, Brian Marchment was there. You know, rest his soul, and he's the guy that I got to watch just put the fear of God into other teams. You know, and when Mush was on the ice, like you didn't go through the neutral zone with your head down. I mean, if you did, you were dead. And you know, that's what I sort of wanted to emulate. I wanted to be that guy, and then the shot blocking kind of was an evolution of things. I realized that I could get in the way, and you know, I remember my first couple of years. if I was in front of Mike Vernon and I was in his way, he would chop me in the back of my legs. He was on my team, for God's sakes, right? So the goalies did not want you in the way. They didn't want you ramping shots, right? They didn't want you putting your stick out because you invariably change direction. And they definitely didn't want you going down trying to block a shot. And the guys would say, like, Owen Nolan would be like, he's like, Bud, like, Bernie gets paid a lot of money to stop the puck. Just get the fuck out of the way, like, so, that was sort of like bred by necessity. And I think as I started doing that, I think it became much more of an asset to teams. And now you see, like, you've got to almost get it through 5 sets of legs to get it on net from the point. I mean, everyone's a shot blocker now, and I think that's pretty cool. It makes it a lot harder to score, but there's definitely been an evolution there.
Before you move on, Wally, I gotta see if even Suts remember this. So you were with us, obviously, and then you get traded to Edmonton, and we played Edmonton it was either the last or the second to last game of the season. I can't remember which. And we were in Anaheim, and Suts had a chance to absolutely kill Teemu. And didn't. Obviously, you don't want to send a 39-year-old into the summer or the end of his career, whatever it might be, with a concussion. But I didn't let up on Corey Potter when the puck came around. I stepped off the bench. I took about 4 strides down the side of the bench, and Corey Potter tried to pick up a puck like this. And I was in the trade rumors at that point, right? I didn't want to get traded. Who wants to leave Anaheim, honestly, right? When you're thinking about it. And I was, I just scored my 35th or 34th, whatever it was. I had a good year, even though we kind of fell short of the playoffs at that point. And I absolutely buried this poor guy. Like a guy probably getting a couple freebie games at the end of the year. I felt terrible about it after the fact.
Did you, Bobby? Did you really?
No.
Come on, Bobby.
No,
I know you better than that.
Well, I crushed him, and he did not get up quickly. And I start skating to the net, and who do I meet at the net but Andy? And I'm going, oh, fuck. And Andy's got, he's got the lumber up, and he's into my back, and he's like, are you kidding me, you piece of shit? Yelling at me. So, and I'm going, Suts, I'm trying not to get healthy scratched. It's so, we're like, they're trying.
Well, then, Bobby, then do you remember Perry? I think we had the goalie pull. It was like a close game, and Perry being the worm that he is, he's still trying to score an empty netter, and he like stripped the puck, and I lost it behind the net. Do you remember that? I attacked Perry. Like, I was just like, I always had such a hard on when I played against all teams that I came from, and I really like when I signed in Anaheim. And it really sucks the way it went down, because like I turned down a 2-year contract at the end of the year there when I was with Ottawa, because I wanted to test the free agency market, and they never came back around. The Sens never came back around at free agency. They offered me at the end of the year, but then never came around, and that was a serious option for me to come back to Ottawa. But I had said, look, respectfully, like, I'd really, if you're interested, I hope you're still interested in, like, but I need to see this through, because at that time for me, like, I was like, I kind of want to go west, I kind of want to live. I was 35 years old. I'm fortunate enough to sign another deal at that age. Like, I kind of want to go to the rink in flip flops for a bit, right? So at the time, I said to my agent, I said, leave me a job with the Ducks or the Kings. I said, I don't really care who. I had a 1-year deal offer with the Kings, and I got a 2-year deal offer with the Ducks, and we went back to the Sens, and they weren't in the picture anymore. So it's funny how these things happen. And then, lo and behold, I ended up going to Edmonton at the end of my career, which, I always had this interpretation of what it would be like to play there too, and probably negatively, to be honest. But going there, it was one of the most enjoyable times of my career. Being a 37, 38-year-old, and playing with all those first overall players, and then like in Ottawa, the fans are so educated, they're so passionate, they're so into the game, and it was just really a wonderful way to go out. And I felt like I had a mentorship role there, and sort of player coach type of role. And it was as much as I didn't get to choose, how I went out my final game, because I had a career-ending injury training for what ended up being the lockout season. And then I just never came back. So I didn't get, there was no swan song or anything for me. The last game I played was this is a funny story. They'd been scratching me for like 30 days because they were playing all the kids. We'd missed the playoffs for like 2 months, and they had scratched me. I hadn't played for a month or 5 weeks. And I'm drinking, I'm having a good time like every road trip, like, and we were in Calgary and the game finishes in Calgary and I'm on the plane on the way to Vancouver for the last game of the year. And Steve Smith comes up. He's like, Sutsy, you got to play tomorrow. I'm like, yeah, fuck you, Smith. I'm not playing, right? He's like, no, you're playing tomorrow. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. So I play that final, what ends up being my final game in the NHL. And I hadn't played, like I said, in 4 to 6 weeks or whatever. And my only thing was like, don't get injured and screw your summer up. You know? Yeah. So then, we had the year-end meetings that year, and Tom Rennie, who I loved as a coach, was the head coach there in Edmonton at the time. And he says to me, and I had signed a 1-year extension, so I was going to be 38 that next season. I was definitely like, living out the end of my career. I knew it was happening, and I was ever more thankful of it. But he said, Sutsy, you're only going to play like 35, 40 games next year. And I said, Tom, you know me better than that. I'm not going to accept that. So I go into that summer and I'm training harder than I've ever trained before. And I end up snapping off a piece of the base of my femur in my knee joint, doing a bunch of box jumps and stuff like that. Bobby, you might remember, because I think I was skating with you when that was going on. So it gets like 2 or 3 weeks before they end up locking us out. And my agent at the time, he says, you got to get on a plane to Edmonton. So I go in, they do an MRI, and the orthopedic surgeon comes in. He literally looks at me and goes, what the hell have you been doing? Like he thought I was, messing around or, got in a car crash or something. So he told me what happened, and it ended up being the end of things for me, which is pretty crazy in hindsight.
Still almost played 700 games. Which was an outstanding career. So, Andy, I need to go back to this. I know we only have you for a short time left. Gavin, let's play the sound so we can discuss the one thing that Andy Sutton may be tired of hearing in his career.
Are you asking me or are you telling me?
No, I'm asking.
You're an expert?
No, it was on the replay.
So you're an expert?
No, it was on the replay.
So you saw it, you're saying yes. You saw it, you're an expert?
Yes.
You're not an expert, so we'll...
No, I'm saying I saw it. I'm asking, did you know you got your elbow up?
You're telling me I got my elbow up?
It was on the replay.
You're an expert. You know it was up.
Okay. That's it, guys. Thank you.
Okay. So
it's incredible. Before you talk, the eye roll is incredible. Knowing Suts, I'm like, that's the best eye roll ever. Yeah.
Oh man,
that's the eye roll.
So Andy, while this is going on, but this is a heated playoff series. This was a huge hit. Everybody's angry now from the Pittsburgh media. We're in Pittsburgh, obviously. I'm dead center, getting ready to chat with you. Mic is up. My cameraman, all of a sudden, the camera dips. And did we lose it? And when it dips, I know that something's wrong. He's now, while this is going on, this is the greatest soundbite I think I've heard in my entire career. He's at the back of the locker room trying to fix his camera. I have none of the sound. So you don't see a TSN mic there anywhere. All you see is Ian Mendez and the Sportsnet mic. And so we had to get it from Sportsnet later. But we don't have it recorded. Have we lost Andy?
It's not looking good at the moment, is it?
What is it with the Nashville internet service?
If he's out on the, I don't know exactly where he lives, but he said he's out on the farm. So, I mean, you're gonna love me when I tell you about the situation at my new house that I just found out about. We'll save that for off the record, but
I don't want to know right now.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Well, let's hope he pops back. Yeah, there we go.
Sorry, guys. So I got a FaceTime call. It kicked the whole thing out. But yeah, it was, the emotions were so high at that point in time. We lost the game, so I was already pissed. And then this guy tries to trap me. And I know there were probably a lot of good questions coming, especially from the Ottawa side. And it was just, how you guys, when you're in the playoffs, your emotions are running so high. And I that interview and the expert thing it doesn't really. I'm not tired of it. It's actually like, I don't know. You're so passionate and you're in it and you're living it and you're going after it. So it just reminds me of how how intense it all was and how meaningful it all was at the time. Because like this is one of the things that I find so fascinating, and Bobby and I have talked about this. When we retire, when we stop playing, so used to the energy being high, and a lot of times, you know, we start to self-medicate, and we don't know how to stop that cycle of the highs and the lows, and so we actually create it manually, and I think that, you know, that's all that really makes me think about, and the guys, you know, the guys that have struggled, and I mean I struggled when I was done. No, people don't hear about it. They don't live through it, you know, so publicly. But I think we all deal with it in one way or another, and it's all part and parcel to that, you know, the intensity. And the real world isn't like that. We're not measured in 45-second increments. You know, you have to take a more of a global approach to things, and really sort of play it long. My day, Bobby, like your day now, like there's nobody watching what I'm doing, you know, except for my son, you know. So I kind of look at it that way more, and then really just try to divide everything now by a bigger number, to, you know, try to play it long and really own my space, because while we're playing, that's the other thing. Like, we're told what to do, where to go, how to be, what, you know, all that stuff is planned for us. Well, then when you have an abundance of, you know, really money, free time, and a lack of structure, that's not good. That's not good for people, you know. So like stuff like our skate on Wednesday, Bobby, like as trivial and as ridiculous as it might be, it's these pillars that we can recreate as ex-athletes are so important, and the people we choose to be around that can support us and that love us, you know, Bobby, like for me, like to be able to look after you and help care for you in your journey, and vice versa, if that feels meaningful to me now, because we really did, we lived it, and we were in a special fraternity, and I think nobody knows more what it's like than players or media that followed it all around. So, you know, I feel so honored by the game, and I feel so honored to still be part of the game, and to be able to impart the wisdom that I've been so fortunate to learn over the years into what I do now.
Yeah, I couldn't have, I mean, everything you just said was just absolutely perfect, so I'm not even going to elaborate, but I couldn't agree with you more. And it's funny when you leave the game, whether it's under your own accord or not, or however it goes, and however you kind of move on, I think people forget that we go 150 miles an hour to zero very, very fast, and yeah, it gets lost in translation sometimes. So people are like, why is this person struggling? But they don't understand the fact that our lives were regimented to the to the minute, and if you played for the Randy Carlisle, to the second. So so the adjustment period's hard, man. It's a grind.
It is, and Bobby, more to the point, like in these sort of pillars that we talk about, and even what you're doing here, and the listeners that listen to you guys, it's so important that we uphold Bobby in his new identity too, you know, and give him a place where he feels worth, because we feel so much worth, and when we're playing, and then it's also ripped from us very quickly. You have a bad game or a bad shift, or you're put on waivers, or you're traded, and people don't understand what that's like to have your life so jostled about. And I think the average fan who looks at it and like, well, but you make all kinds of money. But then you've got to evaluate that against a lifetime. Do you really make so much money, like over the course of a lifetime? Because so many of us give up everything. You know, like my body hurts every day. I you know, you said I played 700 games. Well, I played for 16 seasons. So I mean, do the math. I mean, and when I went into Long Island, it took me 40 days to sign, and I went in and first thing I said to Garth Snow, who I knew a little bit before I signed, I said, "Hey, Snowy, you got a great deal on me." Hey, he looked at me and, like, without batting an eye, he goes, "What the fuck do you mean?" He said, "You only play 35 games a year. You're the highest paid player in the league." and he was right. You know, I was always in a walking cast all the time. I was, you know, constantly lit up, and I still suffer those things today, and that stuff goes on, and then there's the, you know, the emotional stuff, and, you know, all the head stuff, and we just really, like, there can't be any shame in all of it, and we need to support each other more. People need to support the athlete more too, because I understand we're entertainers in a lot of regards, but there's human beings in there too, and it's really important that we understand that.
Agreed.
Totally. Especially because you guys are young, right? Like, your careers are over before you're 40, and think of how much longer you have to go. You go from the bright lights of everybody chanting your name. Like, Andy, you played 24 games in Ottawa, and everybody remembers you. Like, you've left a mark. And so that's what you guys have done across the league, is left a mark with people. So I totally appreciate the quiet of the the back rooms when all the lights are down and you're wondering what to do next. That's a daunting task sometimes.
It is, and the one piece, and Bobby, I'm sure you can attest to this too. And I'm not going to go down a rabbit hole here, but like we pay all kinds of money into the Players Association as an example, or we pay our agents all kinds of money. Well, when the music stops, there's really nobody around to support you, guide you, and then more importantly, most athletes don't have the foresight to put structures in place so that you come out of it and you've actually got places to pour your intensity. And that's the biggest piece. Is like we're intense people. That's the only way you make it to that level. You've got to be an absolute savage, right? So now you have to have somewhere to put all that energy, and I'm so thankful that I was able to go dive into business, and business has become that thing for me. It's endless, and now it's all cerebral. So even if my body rots, I can still do deals and do things that are meaningful, work on my brand, and really just sort of connect and build a team that way. And with Verbero now and what I do, the team that I built, and it's very selective too. It's the big piece that I missed, and Bobby, you can attest to this too. Like we got so much from that locker room feel too. All the time spent with our buddies, and all the camaraderie, and all the ribbing and chirping each other, and all the good stuff. The travel, all the different places we got to go and stuff like that. It's like I feel really fortunate that I've been able to put that back together, and that's been a big source of support for me as I sort of segue into my 50s now.
Into the 50s. Wow.
Into the 50s, baby.
Into the 50s.
Andy, I know you got to go, but do you have a sec to talk about Verbero?
I don't have to go. I moved my stuff around. I'm wide open for you guys. Whatever you want to talk about.
So then I want to go back to the expert stuff because I talked to Phil Legault, who was the PR guy who ended that for you, and I said, Phil, what do you remember 13 years later? And he goes, oh my God. He goes, I couldn't apologize more to Andy after that was done. So what was said in the room behind the locker room afterwards?
To be honest with you, I was just pissed that this guy tried to trap me. Like I would have hoped at that point in my career that there's like more respect, and the stakes were so high, and I didn't need to be trapped into like announcing that I'd gotten my elbow up, and really it was very irresponsible of that journalist or media guy, whatever you want to call it, that he came at me that way. It was very reckless what he was doing, and at that time, and I felt really angry, but then at the same point in time, like you got the next game to think about, so you kind of curb it, and it's interesting to me, I guess, or ironic that's a thing that follows me oftentimes, or it's a very strange thing now. As hockey doesn't. Despite the fact that I work in hockey, my career, my life there, it doesn't really come up as much as you might think. Like I don't think anybody really cares much about athletes after they're done. Like I think like people they'll be interested in the stories if they're hockey people, but I don't often talk about it. So it's more interesting to me, I guess, that's a thing that walks in the room before me. And I guess it's my worry that maybe that somebody might assume that there's arrogance or something there that really is not the case with me. I don't think I'm an arrogant person. I think that video makes me look like I might be arrogant, but that's sort of secondary to the facts.
So I'm in that scrum, so I completely understand what it's like. One, when it's the playoffs, the two media sides tend to actually be part of the team. They become one of right. So the questions become a lot more slanted. Although that's the only time I can ever remember somebody made a statement as opposed to ask a question. Like all the guy had to say was, "What did you think of that hit?" But instead, he's like, "Did you know you got your elbow up?" I'm like, so I'm hearing this. I'm like, what kind of question is this? So the tension was out. Like, if for a media guy, it was an outstanding environment, but it was wild to be involved with. I will say that.
Yeah,
but I'll never forget it.
Yeah, and I won't either. And you back an angry lion into a corner. It's not great, and I was already there. Like blood was all over my face, and I was like, like you just don't go at somebody like that. Or maybe that's the way he's trying to make a name for himself. You know what I mean? He's going to be the guy that causes me to lash out at him or do something. And I can see how that might be a strategy too. But you're right. Like and in particular in Ottawa, the entire staff there. It was unbelievable, so professional, and it was one of the things that I really took away from my time in Ottawa, just how professionally the team is run. But then again, like, you have Daniel Alfredson as your captain, it's kind of hard not to tote the line. I mean, you want to talk about, like, you know, the greatest players that I ever played with or against, he's at the top of that list, hands down. I mean, the guy is just embodied everything that it was to be a pro, every skill set you could ever need to excel at the game. I mean, just nasty to play against, filthy from a skill standpoint, like could hurt you, could score against you, would uplift his teammates, like just unbelievable leadership. And these things come from the top. When you have a great program, it starts at the top, and you've got to have your best players be your biggest leaders.
Interesting. So when you came in the room the next couple of days, were you being called the expert by your teammates?
You know, like, I don't know if guys were. I don't really remember. I think, you know, you're so hardwired to just like be a little bit hyper focused, I guess, and very, maybe in a certain ways too, like, and maybe this feeds back into too, Bobby, like the issues that we have when we're done. Like, there's a very narcissistic component to being a pro athlete too, because like everything's about what you need, your hydration, your sleep, your nutrition, your this, your that, and you've got all kinds of people that feed into that. Well, then when it stops, like, the real world doesn't care if you're hydrated or not. Like, they're like, you know, you get some water, dude. Like we've got nothing for you here. So I don't know. I think that's the thing I remember the most, is just like how much the media team there did a great job at mitigating things and really just, you know, setting everybody up for success.
Yeah, you're at the gas station asking the peanut cup to test if you're hydrated or not, eh?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we used to do that Monday, Wednesday, Friday in Ottawa.
Yeah, no kidding.
So, yeah, you get out of this shell.
Yeah.
Okay, your first fight. So you're a college guy, and all of a sudden now you're in the National Hockey League and you're fighting. Your first fight's Jerome McGinley, if I'm not mistaken. At what point did you, like, was it tough for you to become a fighter? Because in college, there's no fighting.
Mm-hmm. It's funny, and fighting, ironically, like, is in large part probably the reason why I made it. And I remember even going back, like, I didn't make my midget team. I got cut. And so I went and played in Gananoque, Ontario, like junior B. I still remember there was a guy on my team, and he came in, he had a big duster. He had a day job. He had baby mama drama. And I remember coming to that team, and I was 15 years old playing junior B. And I learned the ropes, like, playing in this league where, like, you'd go into Wellington, and I mean, you'd skate out of the corner and you'd be at the red line. I mean, it's like the smallest rink in the world. They try to kill you when you go in there. So I had to, like, learn how to survive in that as a young person. And then at the end of my second year, there was some kind of tournament series, and I got invited to go play in this tournament series. And I still at that time was like, you know, I'd really love to get a scholarship. And I knew that St. Michael's College in Toronto was like the place to go. It was there, and like somewhere out in BC were like the two places that were, or Wexford were like maybe the three places you could go where you were probably most likely to get an opportunity. And I went to this tournament series, and there was 4 teams that played, and it was a round robin style on the weekend. And I remember this OHL guy, Ken Boone, he picks a fight with me at center ice. All the other teams are watching, and I beat the shit out of this guy, like as bad as I've almost beat anybody in my life. Well, Dave Barrett, who was the head coach of the St. Michael's Buzzers, was there watching, and that's how I got into St. Mike's. Well, then that's how I got into Michigan Tech. And then when this is an interesting story, when I went in with the Sharks, the same thing happened. I went into the first rookie camp. I'm skating to go off the ice, and at center ice, one of the guys, and another Sharks prospect, sticks me at center ice. He's like, "You want to go?" I'm like, yeah, sure. So we're at center ice, and the entire Sharks brass is sitting up like 10 rows above at center ice. And I destroy this guy, like literally destroy him. And I didn't think much of it at the time, but I come out after the skate, and I'm like going wherever I'm going, to the training room or something like that. And John Ferguson comes down, and he's like frothing at the mouth. He's like, that's what we need around here. He's like literally losing his mind. And then we go into training camp that year, and I fight like Bill Heward and a couple other guys, and I do well, like fighting these men. And then the thing that happened to me, which was crazy in hindsight. So Brant Myers was our tough guy. Well, Mizey's in the substance abuse program. Mizey's a dear friend. He's been a dear friend of mine since that time, and he gets pulled. He gets suspended. So now we don't have a tough guy. And they're like, oh, well, this guy's had a few good fights. Like, we'll just put him up on the wing on the fourth line. And I'm fighting like Scott Parker and like all these guys. And I'm like, and you fight Scott Parker. I mean, I can remember, and I think I fought him 3 or 4 times over the next 2 years. I fought Ty Domi, like all these guys. And I'm just like, what am I doing? I always could always hang in there because I was big and strong. I don't think I was ever like a killer, like a heavyweight, but I could get by. So I think early on I got kind of typecast. But then it also, like, longer term, it bought me space, and then I could pick and choose. Like, and then when I started playing defensively against top lines, I was fighting Jerome McGinley and Vinny LeCavalier and some of these guys that were big, strong power forwards. And then it really was like, oh wow, this guy's even more valuable. He can defend top lines, and he can also like send a message and irritate these skill players enough that they want to fight him, or they're going to try to jump him or whatever. So it's like I think it helped me in a lot of ways, like that I wasn't afraid to do that. And then there were other times, like being honest, like I was a top defenseman in Atlanta for 5-6 years. There were other years where, Anaheim included, where I ended up being like a 5-6-7 defenseman, and fighting helped keep me in the lineup, or it gave me that next opportunity. So it was something that I think I always knew, and I could always protect my teammates. If something ever happened, I never thought twice about it. Like, I was always in there to sort of work, to sort of help out where I could there. And I think at the time for me, it was an important component to me, sort of being like a chameleon and figuring out the ways that I could extend my career. And that's what it was for me. I wasn't like Bobby, where I had so much opportunity, and everybody knew I had like so much skill, and all I had to do was give him ice time and he's going to score 40 goals without even trying. It was different for me. I kind of had to carve out that identity for myself, and then kind of reinvent myself many times, depending on which team I was on, or which coach I was under, and that type of thing. So it was all kind of part of the identity, I guess, that I had to carve out.
The only time I was ever scared of Andy Sutton is when he absolutely came about this close to beating the wheels off of Saku Koivu in a playoff practice, because I was on his line, and Saku was pissed off. And I'll never forget Andy's yelling out, "I haven't played in 3 weeks, you little shit." And and you were chasing him out of the corner because Saku had a temper.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And he
would whack you. He slashed me pretty good, and I was frothing at the mouth because Randy Carlisle had me all wound up, and it's ironic how these things go, because when I got into Anaheim, obviously I'd come off that great year and with the Sens, and when I started the season, I was partnered with Lubomir Visnovsky, and I was in the top pair, and like that's what was going to happen. I was. At the time, like, Randy was thinking of making me the assistant captain, and I shattered my thumb in 7 places the first game of the year against Detroit. I came back too early. I look back at these things now, and I had a big cast on my hand, and I stuffed it in the glove, and I'm going to come back and play because, God damn it, I need to get out there. And I played like shit. I had my hands weren't good enough to also have a cast on and play in the NHL. Like, I had no business being out there. I muffed a pass in front of the net. First game, Patrick Scharf roops it. We lose the game. Like, it just started on a bad foot, and I missed like 38 games or something that had surgery on my thumb, and it just never really got back in the fray there as much as I would have loved to. And then Randy starts sitting me out, and Bobby, you remember this? Like, he's the kind of guy, like, I don't want to go down a super rabbit hole here, but like the kind of guy that tries to exert control by like embarrassing you. And I'm at this time, like, I'm in the league 15 years, and he's dressing me for warm-ups, knowing full well I'm not going to play, just because he wants as many ducks as he can get on the ice to make the Ducks look scary and warm up. You're standing around on the ice, so you don't take a turn like with any of the 3-on-2s, or like you're kind of just like, you feel like an absolute heel when you're out there. And it just like kind of went from bad to worse. Your confidence goes down, and you just can't really right the ship sometimes.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. And I won't speak on Randy too much, but I'll never forget you chasing Saku out of that corner.
Well, that stuff's a regret. And like I was always kind of like I'd get like progressively crazier like when stuff like that was going on, because again, like I needed an outlet for my for my energy back then, and when to sit me out was not a good thing. It wasn't good for anybody, So like then you start.
I'm sitting there and I'm like, who's going to stick up for him? Because his other line mate's Tamu. So I'm sitting there going, I'm the only guy that's, at least within realm here. So I was like, hey, Sutz, stop.
Yeah. I think they blew it down. I think Randy was like, Sutz, what the fuck are you doing? I'm like, and I'm just frothing at him. I was so mad, I'm just like, we're about to start playoffs, and I'm just like, I want to play, it was just, sometimes it was hard to be the teammate guy. Like that was never who I was. I'm not a cheerleader. Like I want to be out there. I'm a gladiator. Like I want to fucking play. Like I don't want to sit on the sidelines and watch people do the job that I think I should be doing, and I think as an elite athlete, I mean, if you're ever comfortable sitting on the sidelines, you're probably doing the wrong thing.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
Someone in the chat just wants to know who had the meanest jab.
Are you talking about fighting, or are they talking about? Oh, geez. Well, I've fought Colton Orr a couple times, and one time in particular, I'd hammered what was his name, the Ryan Callahan, and before I got I think I got a penalty actually on the hit, and before I could get I got on the ice, and before I could turn around, Colton had come off the bench, and he grabbed me, and he caught me before I could turn around and square up. And I tell this story all the time, and the rumor is about Colton is he's got 15 plates in his right hand, right? So he just hammers away like a jackhammer, and he can't shatter his hand because it's pure titanium. And I can remember the helmet, it was just hitting my helmet. It wasn't hurting, but he was hitting me so hard and so fast, and my helmet was ching, 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 ching. And I remember just feeling the weight of these punches in the side of my head. I'm like, there is no way I'm turning this face to look at this guy to try to get one in. I'm like, I'm just gonna pull this whole thing down. So he definitely hit hard. But I remember even a guy like Rick Rippon. And I fought everybody that's gone from us now, which is crazy. But I remember when I fought Rick, he didn't grab you and jostle you. When you punched, he went like this, and then he came in with the left. He actually blocked and then come across with a hook. And these are guys that now started they came from boxing backgrounds, or George Peros. Bobby, you can attest to this. Here's a guy who fought more times than any player per year. George was fighting 35 to 42 times a year, and he never have a mark on his beautiful face. He'd very rarely ever get hit or punched, and he used a lot of the principles of judo when he fought, and he was incredible. I mean, just the way that he was able to fight the toughest people on earth. And even you talk about fighting, and it's such a zero-sum game. I'm talking about what Colton Orr did to me. And Peros is the guy that pretty much ends his career in Toronto. Literally caught him the kind of punch. And George said this to me after. He said it's the kind of punch you don't even feel it hit. It hits so hard. When you hit a golf shot and it's the one that just goes, but it feels like you didn't even hit it. Yeah. George said, it was the same thing. He said, I just caught him he stepped into it, and it was lights out. Or these guys that shatter faces. And I mean, it's a crazy thing to me now looking at it that I would bare knuckle fight in front of 20,000 people standing. You talk about UFC or boxing, they've got gloves on. It's there's rules of engagement. I mean, this is bare knuckle fighting. And the fact that you're not allowed to hit somebody in the head with a body check, but you're allowed to punch them in the face and you don't go to jail is pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy to me.
It is wild. Would you take fighting out of the game?
I'm not a proponent of taking it out. I like the fighting where it's a spirited interaction. I've pushed Bobby too far. Bobby turns around and he's going to protect himself, and there's a spontaneous fight. The thing that I always hated it. It made no sense to me. If I'll just pick on George because I know he doesn't care. If George is playing a minute and a half a game, but we go down 2-1 and George gets put on the ice and George has to fight Stu Grimson, they fight, and then we go back to playing hockey. That doesn't make any sense to me. I don't believe there was ever momentum that's gained. If George destroys Stu Grimson, I'm not feeling better the next shift. We're still down 2-1. I don't think it changes anything. So that fighting needs to go. But when I watch, for example, Tom Wilson run around, I personally think somebody needs to kick that guy's ass. I don't like the way he plays. I think he's a rat. I think there's not enough guys in the league. I guarantee he's not going to do that if he's playing against Milan Lucic, right? So there is a thing that changed, and I just know from my own experience, if I played a team and there was nobody that could that I was worried about, I would run around like an absolute idiot. If a team had a couple of guys that could really go, and I knew I'd have to fight if I played like that, I'd be more thoughtful about what that would look like, But Bobby doesn't want me running around chasing him. Bobby wants George in the lineup because Bobby doesn't want me chasing him around trying to make his life or trying to end his life when he's in the corner. That's no good for Bobby's game. If Bobby's there to score goals and and do amazing things offensively. He can't be worried. He can't be worried about guys like, you know, trying to take his head off at the same time. So I think it is important if it's done right.
Okay. So here, Wally, is where guys like Sutton and I that think that there's a place and a time for it, except for the premeditated stuff.
The stage fighting, sure.
The game is much safer when the players have an ability to police themselves because of everything that Andy just said. So we'll get into that at some other time. But I agree with everything you just said. The game is safer when you have guys like Andy and George and guys like that can police the game without rats. Tom Wilson's an example, but I don't think he's a great example in the fact that I think he'll fight. The great examples are guys that won't stand up for themselves. We call them on the bullshit that happens behind plays. Like Tom Wilson will stand in there and go, maybe not at Ryan Reed's level. I think they fought too anyway, but at the same time, if the world had, if the league had more guys that lived in the world that Andy lived in and played in, I think the league would be safer from rats. That's just my old.
I get it. No, I get it. It just seems weird that we allow violence of that nature in the middle of a hockey game, but that's
true.
Okay. Andy, before you go, I need to ask about your hockey company. You make sticks, gloves, pants. You do socks, I could be here all day telling everybody what they are, but explain to us what Verbero is and how you're trying to disrupt the market.
Yeah, I mean, so those that don't know Verbero's been around since 2008. It paid into the NHL for 3 seasons, representing players like Cam Atkinson. The brand was very roller specific. It was a California upstart brand. It had some good things, but really when I had an opportunity to acquire it in December of 2019, and prior to acquisition of the brand, I had been when I retired from the game, I did a bunch of stuff, but then I ended up being president of a multi-brand hockey company out of Southern California. And while I was there, I was part of some acquisitions, and I did a lot of. It was a small group of people that ran this sort of mid-sized company. So I had to wear a lot of different hats, which was very valuable. I got to learn the ins and outs of really hockey retail, hockey e-commerce, really, manufacturing, product development, sourcing, embellishments, like literally everything that I applied into Verbero. So when I acquired the brand, I really realized more than anything that I wanted to solve a couple fundamental problems. One was access. I wanted to give top quality products at approachable pricing. That was fundamental to me because I knew what the manufacturer cost was. And I give this example all the time. The difference between a $200 retail skate and a $1,200 retail skate is like $50 at manufacturing level. So why should the end customer have to pay $1,000 for something that costs the brand $50? That's fundamental to me. So for like in the US, for example, our sticks are all the time at $249 retail. The competitor equivalent stick now is over $400, right? And then if you're a team that does custom with us, and the backbone of Verbero is custom. We do custom everything. We excel in custom. I want our partners to have every way to really promote themselves, every way to show individuality, every way to make the game fun, because I think that like the 2 or 3 stripe jersey is boring. We're really pushing the frontier there. So, we offer sticks to teams that do custom and associations that do custom with us at $159 a stick. And then on top of that, we'll do custom graphics. So that sort of embodies who we are. We're very partnership focused. We're very custom product focused. And then outside of that, we created some framework, some software that really allows the access to be easier. So we have a proprietary team store platform that we utilize. We have a proprietary order tracking system that communicates with customers, because the other piece that I recognized in the custom world, I don't ever want to deliver anything late. So for me, it's self-serving. I need to see where the orders are in process at every minute of every day. So we created an interface that connects with our manufacturing teams, and where they're giving updates on the relative orders. And when they put the updates in, it's flagging the customer and the sales rep as to where things are in process. So now the customer has visibility, so the customer experience is better. And then we really just focus on every aspect of caring for the customer, what they need, customer communication. I invest in the business to no end in the customer experience. That's fundamental to the business.
Are your sticks any good? That's all I want to know.
I will put our stick up against any of the top tier equivalent sticks from any of the other brands all day long, every day of the week. The stick is a beast. The stick also embodies, if you think about it, I'm not punching holes in the blade. I'm not trying to, make the shaft profile less to save weight. Our stick is 350 grams. It's one of the lightest sticks on the market. It has a solid core blade and an extra spine throughout the entire shaft. So essentially I have 5 walls in the shaft and a solid core blade, and we're still at 350 grams. So the stick is a workhorse. It's a beast. It doesn't break. It has incredible balance. It pops off the blade, and like I said, I'll put it up against any top tier equivalent from the other brands.
So how do you get around, or how do you get past the marketing of the big 2, if you will, and CCM and Bauer, True, I guess, at 3?
Well, I don't want to give you the magic recipe, but I'll tell it to you like this. Those brands are so tired and they're so regimented in their ways. They're retail focused. So all they're trying to do is suppress retail. Well, as we all know, retail's dying. I mean, how much stuff do you guys buy on Amazon? I mean, I can order stuff now and it can be here before I go to bed tonight. That's the world that we live in. And then on top of that, what's the other world we live in? You can customize everything. You want custom. So I'm playing in a different sandbox, right? I'm taking a lot of the same products and I'm putting them in this other sandbox where it's really focused on the custom side of things. And for me, like, I can sell sticks and that's fine. If I can sell jerseys, socks, shells, bags, apparel, hats to teams and associations that order that shit every single year. On top of that, we do stuff like a replica jersey fundraiser. Nobody's done this. So if you buy custom with us, we'll host jerseys online for sale. We give our association partners back the delta between cost of goods and retail. We handle that fundraiser on our side, all the individualized fulfillment. So for like the South Carolina Gamecocks last year, we put over $50,000 back in their back pocket by hosting a couple of replica jersey fundraisers for them. It's just partnership focused stuff. Really focusing as much on the on ice and travel accessories and the apparel as anything. And then really we're the only company. A lot of companies do that on the apparel side, but then we also have the equipment, and we have team rewards that we put in on the equipment side: tape, laces, wax, the stick deal that I told you about. Really giving exclusive pricing on those types of products. And what that is, it's a reward for buying custom from us, for buying all of your jerseys and socks and apparel and hats and all that stuff from Verbero.
You can go to verbero.ca, I believe, in Canada, also verbero.com in the US to order if you want. I did look at the sticks earlier today. My kid, I was thinking of trying to order them for him because I'm terrible. It doesn't matter what I use. So I will look at it for him. Andy, I don't want to keep you any longer, but I do appreciate your stuff. Did you get, by the way, your degree? Did you finish your degree?
I did. Yep, I'm a certified engineer. Although I probably wouldn't walk on a bridge if I built it. It's been a long time. I don't know if I could do a derivative anymore. So it's I'll let you know if I start building any bridges anytime soon.
That's awesome.
Okay, awesome. Listen, I 24 games in Ottawa, and you're still one of the most recognizable names. And anybody ever brings up your name, they always say you're an expert. So I wish you would have stayed longer, but we do appreciate you staying on our show longer than you normally had in plan.
Yeah,
I didn't mind.
Appreciate it, buddy.
You.
Yeah, no, guys, it's my pleasure. And honestly, like it feels nice to know that you leave a mark. And my time in Ottawa was one of my absolute favorite times of my entire hockey career. I still remember the first time that the national anthem was being played and they're passing that giant flag around the bowl, and just being a Canadian kid and being there. I remember every hair on the back of my neck stood up, and that Senator's jersey just felt so iconic and bold and powerful when I put it on. And then obviously looking down the bench and seeing the players that were there. Sorry, Bobby, I know you weren't there, but the players that were there and being a part of that and a part of that quest, and you really felt like you had a chance to win the Stanley Cup was incredible. So it was an honor. The honor was all mine, and I'm just thankful that it meant something to somebody else too.
Awesome. Well, we'll like to have you back if you're still available sometime. We need to do hour number 2 of the Andy Sutton.
Yeah. Talk. Yeah. Anytime, guys. Thanks so much, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Andy.
There goes the expert. I will say it every time with his name is Andy Sutton. Phenomenal guy.
What a beauty. A great guy.
Couple of things before we go, but quickly, because I didn't do it during the interview and now I'm going to get yelled at. Our show was proudly presented by Botano. Go to botano.ca. There, Gavin's right on it. Download the award-winning app. Listen, get in on the same game parlays, all that stuff. Don't forget, Saturdays is trivia, 9 p.m. Eastern. Also, if you're up by 17 points when you're picking NFL or CFL games, you've already won. Go check that out online. Look, go to Botano. The game starts now. They do phenomenal work. By the way, must be 19. Please play responsibly. And also by BEI. Go to BonnechereHomes.com. Look for affordable housing just about an hour west of Ottawa. Plenty of floor plans to choose from. Prices starting as low as $500,000. BEI Homes, they bring plenty of quality to your home. Check them out at BonishyourHomes.com. Okay. There, I apologize.
All good.
Bobby,
you nailed it.
Training camp. I know you want to get out of here. Training camp started. What's the first day like? And by the way, first day of training camp is medicals. You got to fill out a bunch of paperwork, right? You got to check your passports. You got to do photos. There's very little of training camp. It's just all the media stuff. So, do you like that day or not like that day?
No, it's one of the worst days of the year. Honestly, it's hurry up. They want you to answer questions as fast as you can, but then you have to get to the place to wait for 30 minutes till the next one. It's a hurry up and wait day, and you just can't wait to get out of there. Because you spend all summer. It's like the lull before you get into it. So today's the first day of camp. When the guys are on the ice, they're together, and seeing some of the reports out of camp, it looks like it was a good first day. I just saw Chris Weidman, though, out for the year, out indefinitely with a back injury today. Chris Weidman in Montreal, obviously. So I'm going to try to get some insider info and text him and see how he's doing. But other than that, back to the Sens. Today's the first day. You're anxious. You want to get through the first practice because you never know how hard that first practice is going to be.
Do you care who your line mates are?
No, not entirely. I think if you're in the top 6, you kind of think about who you're with. I think if you're a guy that's on the cusp of making the team, you're interested to see where you start more so than the top guys. Yes.
Yeah. So it's like if Claude Giroux doesn't see Tim Stützle and Brady Tkachuk on his wing or on his line, he's not, right? Because none of them are ever. You guys don't always put lines together at the start, right? Because you want to see some young guy and see what he can do in that group.
Well, that's the thing. You're going to look at the lines and people are going to talk about them. But at the end of the day, the first preseason game, whoever the young draft pick is going to go up and play on that line. Whoever can show a flash of offensive ability. So it doesn't matter. I don't like reading into things. I would like to see after the second round of cuts where things are starting to shake out.
By the way, 3 days away now till the first training camp or exhibition game, I should say. They play the Leafs on Sunday, is it? The 24th?
Yeah. I think that,
and someone quickly wanted us to mention, if you haven't read Ian Mendez's article on DJ Smith and Pierre Dorion and what has transpired with them over the last 4 years and how they've struggled with their starts, do that at The Athletic. But there's a question, Greg Hodgins, thoughts on Ian Mendez asking Pierre if he and DJ have to audition for their jobs. I think without question, they're auditioning for their jobs, right? There's going to be change in the front office without question. That's just a fact. And so we wait to see. It's expected to be tomorrow, the press conference. We expect to see that Cyril Leader is introduced at that point, and then the changes will start to happen. I don't know how long it's going to take. Michael Andlauer is not an impatient person. He's very patient. He wants to understand what is there, what he has before making those moves. So I still expect to see Steve Staios come in and maybe running the show. Peter Chiarelli, special advisor or something to that effect. Matthew Darche is also expected probably to join the franchise, although he hasn't left Tampa, so I'm not sure. And of course, Alfie back at some point. And what does that mean? What does that shake down? I don't know. But I suspect Ryan Bonus would still stay regardless. I think he's done a phenomenal job as assistant.
I would expect that too. Yeah. And I don't think it's an out of line question. I think that everybody, when you get new ownership, they're going to install what they want to install. That's why they paid whatever they paid and for them to do what they want. So everybody that's not in the top 6 offensively and top 4 defensively is probably auditioning for a job, right? That's just the way it goes. And that carries all the way to the front office. So everybody's probably on high alert right now. The start has never been more important.
No. And if you just, if you spent, and I'll say $1 billion, although it's not all his money, but if you just paid $1 billion for something, you want people you trust in those important positions.
In every category. Yeah.
We'll see how this shakes out, but you want your people that you trust. And don't forget, he's spoken with people throughout. And I know Peter Chiarelli has been an advisor throughout this whole thing, as is Alfie, as is Cyril, about what he needs to do to run this organization. So we'll see how that all plays out. But yes, They are totally auditioning, although I think it's too late for Pierre. I think DJ's still auditioning.
Yeah, I could see that. I think it's 60 to 90 days before we see anything majorly change, because like you said, he's patient. He's got time to play with it and do exactly what he wants. But 60 to 90 days, and then if this team gets off to a good start, you can't argue that, right? And this team, they're primed to do so. So let's hope it does, and everybody's safe and whatnot. But I tend to agree with you. I think that it's too late for a few people, and I think DJ has every opportunity to see this team go to the next level.
There's one thing I didn't understand yesterday, Bobby, and that's so they hire Sean Tierney as the analytics guy full-time. They've had a part-time guy named Elias. And then DJ says, listen, I want the analytics guy to come to me and tell me what we're doing wrong and what the playoff teams do right and what we need to do to be more successful. You've had 4 years. How do you not know what your team is doing wrong?
I take what he said with a grain of salt, because I think he would like to see, I think what he's saying is I would like to see statistically where we're falling short, because if a coach can implement a system, right? And if players miss out on opportunities, that's a coach's decision. But if there's a recurring underlying theme that it's a certain player and it's a certain grouping, then you can kind of go from there. That's kind of what I think he's saying, is like, tell me which guys are the most vulnerable in the both spots, because I don't see it. I see system breakdowns.
But how, Bobby, you're in a National Hockey League. How do you not know this? I think you know this.
I think you know it to a degree. I think you know it to a degree. But at the same time, he can always say, well, at the end of the day, we didn't have the goaltending. Well, now we have that, right? Maybe we didn't have the top 4 that we needed. Now we have that. Now he can actually say, I have this full roster. I'm starting everybody I want to start, provided nobody gets hurt at camp, and you knock on wood that is the case. Now he can really say, show me the analytics when I'm not putting out a 5th or a 6th defenseman in the 2 slot. That's kind of what I think.
I just think you should already know it. That's all I'm saying. He should be in tune with everything that's wrong and right with that hockey team.
I don't disagree. I really don't. I don't disagree.
But we are very in tune with everything that goes on here. So with that, we'll be back on Monday to chat more about training camp and what's going on. Hopefully Shane Pinto is in. We will see if that gets done. But I think they got to make the trades before they sign them. I don't think they can make the deal so much afterwards. Just gives them no leverage whatsoever.
I would agree with that again. Yeah, you can't sign the guy. Nobody's going to bail you out.
Yeah, exactly. Well, or you're going to have to way overpay, right? You're going to have to start giving up prospects or a pick or something to help alleviate the situation. All right.
Very true.
Have a great weekend, Bob. We'll see you on Monday. Thanks for watching, everybody. We appreciate
it.
Coming in hot, presented by Botano.
Thanks, everyone.
Coming in hot is brought to you by Botano.ca. Please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel to never miss an episode.